Hi, Tammy. Welcome.
Oh, thank you, Louise. It's good to see you.
Okay, so my guest is Tammy Davis, and we have talked before, but we've never talked on Facebook Live. And I have wanted to talk to you ever since we met because I'm just trying to remember. It's a while ago. You are a chemist, right? Or
I'm a pharmacologist. Yes, I have a background in pharmacology.
yes,
Yes.
right. Okay. So, and I want to establish that this is not coming from wishy-washy. Let's have a new age thingy going on here. This is for you. This is there's a better way.
Exactly. Yes. This
Yes,
has been a 40-year lifestyle.
yes. And the reason I'm saying this is because this whole pharmacology thing, where I wonder how many people know about the damage that's being done to us by the pharmacology industry, about all the side effects, and not addressing root causes.
I like that. Yes. There's a lot of side effects for sure. And the reason why there's a lot of side effects is because a medication is very specific in the way it influences the body. And
Yeah.
although there are times that we need a medication, there are certain conditions that warrant that. Balancing it out with essential oils actually makes all the it's a difference between having to take more and more and more versus actually finding a balance within the body so that you can actually experience wellness.
Mm, mm, mm. Yeah. I mean, I haven't introduced you. I mean, you do many things, but one of the main things that you do is essential oils. And I've got and we're going to talk specifically about cortisol now. So I think we must maybe just explain a little bit about the cortisol thing, because most people walk around um, lifelong stress because of our disposition, because of the way that we've been brought up. So we carry all that childhood stuff in us. And if you had a challenging upbringing, then you have got low grade post-traumatic stress disorder all of your life. And you're very prone to get it later on. And then there's something called relational post-traumatic stress disorder. If you've been in a relationship for a long time, which is challenging. And then you have life, life,
Right.
life that happens to all of us, and we are all just coming out of a really stressful 2 years, and it doesn't look like it's really over. And I think everybody's systems is just at the point of we just want normal back, and how much fear we can fear itself, right, is another thing that will um, stress ourselves out again. So
Absolutely.
So all of these things and the cortisol that it produces. So cortisol is normal because it's been produced in the normal fight flight reaction, but it should just be removed out of your body. But if you're constantly in the situation, then you get to the point where you've got too much cortisol in your body.
Hmm.
Okay.
Well, you
What
just
else?
and like you just said you just came from a call. You had a call on limiting beliefs, and limiting beliefs will actually stimulate the production of cortisol
Yes.
if we operate within those limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And like in this, what we are doing, we've got 11 days of limiting beliefs. We're going to go through 33 limiting beliefs, but most of us are just automatically, we just have it automatic. We don't even think about them. For us, they are beliefs. We don't actually realize how much limiting they are and how much they make us tippy toe and on eggshells and put up walls around us and keep us from people, and we keep on losing people because of that. So it's all more cortisol inducing. So um, can you tell us what too much cortisol does to the body?
Yeah. This is probably something that people don't want to hear, but it's a fact that it is understood that cortisol alters structures within the brain. And it's the very same structure of the brain that's related to addiction. And that's the area of the brain called the dopaminergic mesolimbic pathway. And that's not a word that you have to remember, but that's a very specific area within the brain that cortisol actually causes alterations to that. And what it does is it increases the amount of dopamine that's being produced. And in the meantime, there's not enough receptors. And a lot of the research and brain development is showing from, like you were talking about, from early on, that we, based on attunement with our parents and what's happening, brain wise and emotionally, because as you know, I mean, as young children, we don't have the reasoning. Our cortex isn't online yet, right?
Mm.
And so we're sensing more. And so there's already demonstrations showing that if our parents are distressed, for whatever reason, in their life, and our brain will pick up on that, and it begins to produce higher levels of cortisol, which is now again decreasing the amount of dopamine receptors because there's so much dopamine being produced. And there's something to be said for the idea that we can be addicted to stress, right? Well, it's not really addicted to
Mhm.
stress, but it's the constant pursuit. I mean, that's where the limiting beliefs actually come into play, because they keep us engaged and they keep that dopamine level, they keep the dopamine up because that's what the body's actually requiring. And so it's a very interesting cycle, and it is definitely possible to undo that. It's very, very possible to help the brain balance the chemistry out and convert, because cortisol has multi-purposes in the body, some of which is anti-inflammatory, believe it or not, but that's when the body's in the rest and digest state. So our job is to help the body get into that rest and digest state so that it can make better use of the cortisol, so it's not keeping us, affecting our health.
Okay. So I think that procrastination is a part of it, is this addiction to that dopamine release from the stress.
I would agree with you. Because
Mm.
think about it, because if you procrastinate, if you're what we call here in the United States the 11th hour, right? It's like the students who wait to the very last minute to get their
Mm.
work done. There's an adrenaline rush, right? It's like, I can do this, and
Yeah.
it becomes this race. And
Mm.
we see this pattern happening a lot as we
Yeah.
get older, and beyond that. So it does. It's self perpetuating.
Mm. I used to be like that. I used to say, um, I used to on purpose leave stuff because I would say, I'm waiting for my adrenaline. When my adrenaline kicks in, I'm going to be superwoman. I used to say, like, where's my adrenaline? I'm waiting for my adrenaline. I used to see it as a positive until I had adrenal burnout, which is what's going to happen eventually.
Yeah, it's exactly right. You're exactly right. And the thing is I think we've become so accustomed to operating at that the idea of not building up that adrenaline rush, it's what do we do with ourselves at that point? How do we what do we do with that sense of peace, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and
So,
yeah, so
so
that
what?
makes sense.
So, yeah. So I think I must maybe share a little bit about my story. So um, I was in such an unhappy place in my relationship. So that in itself brought so much of this, all these unhappy hormones in me, and I was on high alert the whole time. I was always looking around and checking for signs and trying to see and trying to get it fixed. It was such high alert. And I had one thing that made me happy, and that was working. And when I was working, it was my place where I didn't have to think about this unhappiness in the relationship and this, I don't know what to do about it. And this, I, I just wanted the right because I'm so unhappy. So I worked until 11 o'clock every single night. And then I would take a sleeping pill and fall asleep and work 7 days a week. I just worked and worked and worked because it's the only place where I felt a sense of normal. And when you put that together with this very unhappy relationship, and then this whole everything has to be perfect, that pressure you put on yourself, that very high pressure of everything has to be perfect. And I have to look perfect to the world, no matter what the mess inside me and how unhappy I am. And this relationship still looks so beautiful to the world, but inside it's like, I can't do this anymore. And so I had adrenal burnout in the end. And But there was a science before, which I didn't see. That thing that you can't go. I want you to help me with this, Tammy. If I miss any, I want to tell people what to look out for. So that thing that you can't go to sleep at 10 o'clock. 8 o'clock, you want to die. By 10 o'clock, you cannot sleep. That's when you start watching rubbish series.
Yeah.
Anything. Facebook, whatever, anything, so you don't have to go to sleep, and then not being able to sleep at night and waking up like this, and you're wide awake and you can't sleep, and then starts the sleeping pills. And um, um, eventually, if you've got a lot of cortisol in your body, then all your joints start paining and your memory goes away. Okay, what else am I forgetting?
Well, we start developing other nervous habits. That's the what we would refer to as the emotional eating. When you're stressed out like that, you're going to start eating just like this. You think you're hungry, you think you have, but the appetite is a hormone too. And so cortisol, or there's fatigue. There's the whole idea that you're constantly tired, like you were saying with the adrenal burnout, but you can't sleep. And that fatigue is another sign that the hormonal balance, the hormonal system is out of balance because it's on high alert. That was a great phrase, term that you used there. It's on high alert. So those are a couple of other ones that you begin to experience when you're really, really stressed. Other ones are food sensitivities,
Oh, me, hello.
Yeah, we have an increasing population of people that can't eat gluten. We have a lot of our children now are gluten-free and casein-free diets because milk is a bother. They talk about it being lactose, but it's actually the protein in the milk that's disturbing the system. These are all signs that the body is on high alert because, believe it or not, there's actually a gene that is used. So if the body is not on high alert, if it is in that rest and digest state, we actually have a gene in our body that can use those proteins, can actually break those proteins down and make better use of them. Other signs that you're chronically stressed are going to be things like indigestion and bloating, gas, just to name a few.
IBS.
Yeah. What's that?
IBS.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Irritable bowel syndrome.
Yes.
Some of our autoimmune diseases, I think actually probably all of them.
Definitely. And then you make a good point, maybe chronic allergies, allergies just
Migraines. Yeah, migraines.
exactly. Well, migraines are part of, that if you get migraines, that's a sign that your digestive system is out of balance. And the interesting thing is that there's a correlation between the brain and the gut. The vagus nerve actually connects directly to the digestive system. And believe it or not, your microbiome communicates with your with the brain, pardon me, along the vagus nerve. And so if there's anything out of balance in the gut, it immediately sends signals to the brain. So just chronic anxiety, chronic anxiety. A lot of people struggle with chronic anxiety, and they still, like you say, they want they'll go out, but they have this face on, but they are a mess on the inside, and they just don't know how to. These are all good signs that your body is overly stressed, for sure. Thyroid issues. Pardon me. Thyroid issues.
Hello again. Yeah, no, I'm like a walking billboard for what you shouldn't be doing in your life. Okay. So, and then there are two very little known side effects of adrenal burnout, or even if you're like borderline there, like seconds away from it. And that is that the one is that you stop stretching. That lovely, beautiful thing that you do in the morning, you don't stretch when your adrenals don't work. And another one is that you lose empathy for people. War in Ukraine, shame, poor people, let's move on. Like you can't really feel for them. Stuff like, why are you not walking already? Like that kind of insensitivity. When you go, who am I even? You start wondering, who am I even? Where did I go? And I think another one that really relates to this is that you do you're less present.
Yes.
You're much less present in your own life. You sort of loosen. If you feel like you are disconnected from yourself.
Yeah, we lose a sense of honesty, personal honesty with what we need, and we're
Yeah.
focused more externally. When you're starting to burn out like that, for sure, you lose
Yeah.
all sense of self, and we forget to put the oxygen mask on ourselves, because
Yes.
if we're not, because we don't, we just feel so out of whack. I mean, we feel like, and
Mm,
we feel like there's just, I mean, a train wreck happening
mm,
inside, and so it's an avoidance factor that if we don't have to
mm,
look at it, we can focus outward. And I'm as guilty of that as historically, when I was
mm,
raising my children. That's what I did. I mean, it was all about them, and this doesn't mean that they aren't important, but I really lost myself. I went
mm,
invisible. I mean, I put myself.
mm.
I wasn't even on the back burner, and yeah, so that's a big factor right there. When we start really, I would say, if we're hyper focused on making sure that other people are taken care of and their needs are, and we forget about creating a win over here. um,
Yeah.
yeah, I had actually put in my I had put out there on social media the other day that one of the biggest gifts, if you're gonna the biggest self-care tip I have, is to honor your emotions. I mean, like, really get present to your emotions,
Mm,
not as a way of avoiding them, or just never ending, like a volcano of emotions, but
yeah.
actually getting really present to how you feel,
Yeah.
is really very crucial, if in
Mm.
order to turn this around.
Yeah, this is actually what we talked about in the limiting beliefs tonight. We were talking about our belief that we can't express our feelings, that we don't have a right to our feelings. That whole, like, if I express my feelings, there's going to be negative repercussions in some sort of way, or just that general, like, everybody else have a right to feelings, and everybody else's feelings are more important than mine.
Yes.
Okay, so I always tell people about the things that I know about, which helps to reduce cortisol from your body, because you are supposed to actually do some things right in order to remove it. And the ones that I know is sleep. Number one, sleep, sleep, sleep. Number two is to do the right, eat right and do the right things, self-care, a lot of self-care. And number three is fun, to have fun and to laugh. So, but I didn't know that aromatherapy could reduce cortisol levels. And so you have to now tell us about this, because this is so, I mean, it's accessible, right? Everybody can do this.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I do know there are some countries in the world. The first one that comes to mind is France, that actually prescribe. It's very difficult to find essential oils, and some of the people that I work with or talk with in Europe have a harder time finding certain oils. But it's definitely, we are blessed at this point to have access to these plants, these natural remedies,
Mm.
because they make a big difference in the way cortisol is used in the body. They help the brain respond as opposed to being reactive. Again, like I said, a lot of studies on brain development is pointing to the fact that our brains are being affected while we're still in utero. And I'm going to be right now, I'm going to share a little bit of my story. Um, my mother, when she was pregnant with me, by the time she was 3 months pregnant, was told she could only eat carrots, crackers, and celery for 6 months. She had gained her entire weight limit. And I was born over 8 pounds, and at the same time, she like weighed less than 100 pounds. And to kind of put things in perspective, and I don't know, I'm putting this in U.S. terms, obviously with pounds and measurement, but she stood 5 feet 8 inches tall. She was a fairly tall. She is a fairly tall woman, and but she weighed less than 100 pounds when I was born. And for the longest time, and during that, you can only imagine the stress that my mother went through, just in alone of being hungry all the time as this child is taking all of her. Well, that ended up her stress levels and her um, whatever. I don't even want to put words to what was going on with her emotionally, but whatever was happening with her emotionally was imprinted in my brain, and it affected this highly reactive. And so, like, I found, and early on in my life, that if I felt like something was being restricted from me, I would be I would be I was I was a maniac. I just, it would scare me. It would actually scare me, and I could just react in any particular way because it just, and I never understood this. And this is part of the work that I do, is really coming down to understanding this how this is happening within us, and then understanding how very specific plant, it's like when we talk about an essential oil, they are made up of a number of chemicals. So there's not just a single chemical. And that's the beauty of this, is that science has been studying essential oils. Um, well, they've been studying them, and they've been extracting things from plants for over thousands of years. But beginning in the 17th century, so mid 1600s, Merck, who is a big pharmaceutical company today, was extracting alkaloids out of plants then because they wanted to create a concentrated pain reliever. And that's why we have morphine and codeine today. And so this is how long scientists have been studying plant components. So that's one of the reasons I bring forward, is when I start talking about this, they're looking at very specific chemicals within these oils that not only help calm us down, they help the brain begin to be more responsive as opposed to reactive. Like in my case, I was highly reactive to everything. I was so on high alert, making sure, I mean, you could see the greed. I mean, there was also like this level of greed because I was so afraid that I was going to go without. And it took, like I said, I've been doing this for, it's a 40-year lifestyle, over 40 years at this point, between the pharmacology and really understanding the oils and implementing it into my own life. So I'm a testament right now that I don't have that level of rage. I don't have that level of reactivity. So that's the beauty of the oils, again, because they can help the body make better use of the cortisol. They can help the amygdala in the brain, which is the emotional body, right? They can help the hippocampus, which is where we learn and remember things. So there's a lot of, and then there's the visual cortex is the other one that comes to mind, where we can see beyond our limits. That's what I love. And this is what gets so exciting to me, is that now we can actually see beyond our limits. So again, where it's not only just influencing our system, it's influencing the way our brain, and when we implement them as a lifestyle, not as as needed, like we take, like a cold remedy, right? We take a cold remedy when we have symptoms. The idea here is to use them in a way that goes beyond symptoms. You want to use them with the idea of cultivating a life of wellness, and actually seeing ourselves grow healthier. And part of my mission is really to teach people to how to do this for themselves. And as we bring children into this world, we can be teaching children this, so that they're not having to undo what we've been, that we're undoing, and they can actually start off at a better rate. So that's the whole idea of behind this. And so they definitely make a difference with how the body uses, like you said, with cortisol, but also the brain. Because there's two aspects to the brain. There's neuroplasticity and neurogenesis. And they used to think that stopped when we were in our 20s. Neuroplasticity, just for clarification, is the way that brain lays out neural pathways, but it does it in one of two ways. It either lays neural pathways that are in response to the high alert, so you have your reactive neural pathways, or we can lay down new neural pathways that are more responsive and more rest and digest. So actually helping the brain kick you into that rest and digest mode, and just pump out the cortisol when necessary, and then be able to deactivate that process, right away. That's the other. So that's the beauty of it. So that's what neuroplasticity is being, and they're now seeing that this is happening until we take our last breath. So that's a really big reason right there that you want to include oils.
Okay. Is there a one size fits all something that you recommend just for everyone, or is it all individual?
Oh, that's a tough question there, Louise. I can make suggestions that would be a good place to start. Doesn't necessarily mean it's a one size fits all, because the fact is that, like our fingerprints, our immune systems are unique and our brains are unique. I was reading some studies on some brain imaging recently that was saying that you can have 10 cases of anxiety walk in the door, and everybody sits down to be imaged, and every single case, every brain is operating differently. That's the reason why autism is on a spectrum. So I can make suggestions that are a good place to start, but if they're not beneficial. It doesn't mean that their oils don't work. It means that it's not a match for what the person's experiencing, if that makes sense.
Okay, so you don't have like a range where you say everybody who's got cortisol overload should be taking this, or everybody who's got anxiety, or I don't know, I don't even know what else you're going to prescribe it for. I'm really not an expert on aromatherapy.
Well, I'll make some suggestions right now so that people that are watching can actually, at least begin to try. And then I'm just thinking, if we're talking about an overload of cortisol, because I talk a lot on Clubhouse, and I'm just thinking, I did one of the oils I recommended recently for adrenal specifically, but it's also very beneficial for the hormonal system, and it does not conflict with medication. I want to make that clear. That's one reason why, that, besides everything else, that's the other reason why it's not conducive to just making a general one size fits all. So I always hesitate, simply because I try to come up with ideas that I know wouldn't interfere with medications. And the reason for that is I want to make this statement. The reason why is because, as I mentioned in the beginning, medications are very specific in their actions. So that means they target a number of genetic receptors. So say, for instance, you take an antidepressant. The last thing you want to do, just for basic tips, is don't want to use any oil that's recommended for depression, because they're going to do the same thing. And what they find is that the body will react to the natural chemical first, and it'll prolong the medication in the system. And so what ends up happening is you're going to have there's going to be some degree of adverse effect, because now the liver is having to work extra hard to try to metabolize everything. And that's the other thing, is we know how medications are cleared through the liver, or just detoxed and metabolized by the body in general, because of the way plant chemicals are metabolized in the body. So there's another level of conflict. So that's another reason why I put that out there. So the one that I recommended for the adrenals that would begin to actually help dial down that cortisol pump is black spruce. Because
Oh, I never
yeah.
even heard of it.
Yeah, black spruce is a really good one for the adrenals. It'll also do some minor support of the thyroid, because one of the things that happens, the reasons why we end up with a thyroid condition, or at least borderline thyroid issues, is because the adrenals are the ones that are meant to carry the energy of that body. The thyroid is not, but what ends up happening is when the adrenals start to blow out, it defaults to the thyroid. So that's the reason why. So that black spruce actually helps in that level. So that's one oil that you can use. I know that won't be conflicting with anything. Another
No,
one. Mhm.
sorry, I found clary sage. For some reason, I wanted to use it, and I actually started using it. And then halfway through this whole thing, I realized that it pushes up your estrogen, and I was already in estrogen dominance syndrome,
Right.
and so it was like it was recommended for something else, and might even have been for cortisol. I'm not sure. I can't even remember why. It was recommended for something, but I didn't have a professional guiding me and helping me to understand this is the last thing that I should be using.
Yeah, another one along in that category is lavender. And I have to say that here, because that's one of the go-tos,
Mm.
is I want to calm down. So and lavender, here the thing is, they do calm you. Like clary sage is a very nice aroma, and it will soothe you. It'll actually help you feel comfortable. I mean, because it really does help with the autonomic nervous system. At the same time, though, it does act like estrogen in the system. Lavender is the very same way. So although initially, and I talk to people a lot about this, there's the short-term effect, which we're looking to calm down. The long-term effect is it's increasing your body's reactions to the estrogen, because it's plugging into the very same receptors. So there's a number of oils that are like that. So with that said, one, because we were talking about sleep, and that would be cedarwood. Cedarwood is a really nice one to help. There's a component in cedarwood that, through many studies, especially in the elderly who do struggle a lot with sleep, whether it's falling asleep or staying asleep, and there's a component in there that actually supports that process of helping you fall asleep and stay asleep. And it also regulates the vagus nerve, because there's two branches of the vagus nerve. One is sympathetic, one is parasympathetic, and it helps to regulate that. So that's another one that would be beneficial. And it is actually, that one is very calming. I mean, if you just were to smell that one, if your body's really stressed and you just go to smell that one, you're probably going to feel kind of sleepy. But that's
And
okay.
I love
That's,
cedarwood.
that's just fine.
I in a very big way stopped using my essential oils after I had that scare with clay sage, um, except to scare spiders away with cinnamon oil, which is a really effective way of using it. You put cinnamon oil on little cotton wool balls, and the spiders go, "No, I'm leaving. This is not my
Well,
place."
I just learned something new.
That's the extent of my knowledge about is it now cinnamon oil or clove? Now I can't remember. I think it's clove. But yeah, so the spiders don't like it. They go, bye. It's not my place. But yeah, very spider friendly way to get rid of them. Okay, all right. So listen, while you think about, I want to go check the questions here quickly. Let's see.
Okay. I'm going to grab a quick drink right
I
here.
think so. Okay. Hi, Tammy. You're amazing. Tammy, read. Okay. Diet impacts us a lot. And I don't know who Facebook user is. Oh, you are getting love here, my darling. Such a lot of love. Yeah. Okay, so I suppose that's answering my stupid question. But then, of course, there is no stupid questions. And I think I'm asking the quite kind of questions, which is good sometimes not to know everything about everything, because I can ask all the questions for other people, which is in their heads. Okay, so you really have to then find somebody who knows all of these things if you want to make informed decisions about what can I have, and somebody like you is going to look at what other medications you're on, what other things are going on in your life, and going to get you the right kind of mix and tell you how to use this. Is that what we have now deducted?
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Now I'm going to ask you another stupid question, uninformed question. Um, what's the difference between Bach flower remedies and essential oils?
Bach flower remedies are more of an infusion of the plant. It's the essential oil is an extraction. So there's a difference. Like when you infuse, it's a Bach flower remedy is really something it's very homeopathic. It's a very trace amount of the plant, of the chemicals of the plant that has been infused into the base that the remedy is in. And I think Bach is just more of a purified water, I think is what it is. But that's really kind of what it is. And it's very similar to actually a hydrosol, when you get essential oils. And I'll explain about that in a minute. But an essential oil is where they extract the oil from the plant itself. So there's several ways that they do this. And one of them of which, and is increasingly popular, is the steam distillation, where they take plant material and they heat it up to a certain level, and depends on the producer. If they're trying to produce it rapidly, you're not going to get the same quality or content of extraction. But the other thing is that they can, depending on the amount, what they do is they go to extract it through water. They use water. They steam the plant material, and it actually, believe it or not, it actually extracts the oils and stuff. Plant essential oils are in. Sir Isaac Newton said, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. If you think about it, plants actually release oxygen, and they use our carbon dioxide. And an essential oil is basically the plant's reaction to stressors.
Mm.
So when they go to do a steam distillation, that's what they're doing, is they're extracting the hormones, if you will, of because that's all it is. It's oxidative stress produced by the plant. And they're capturing it, and the steam the distillate, the water. So that's the distillate, and then the water that's being used to steam the plant is also sometimes bottled, and that's called a hydrosol. And you can actually get,
Oh,
there's a very similar aspect to the Bach flower remedies, again, when you use the hydrosol, but it's different because it's got the essential, it's just pure essential oil particulates in the water. The other ways that they do it is something called solvent extraction. It used to be, and this is where they would put everything in a chamber and they would use gases. Hexane was a very common one, and they still use hexane for a lot of carrier oils. So, in understanding how they're using the solvents, the challenge with that with the solvent is that when they release it from the chamber, when they open the chamber up, even though the gas will escape, there's residual sometimes, like with the hexane in the oil. That said, they are now doing a lot of what they call CO2, carbon dioxide extraction. And so when they release the carbon dioxide from the chamber, it's automatically released and there's no residuals left in the oil. So that's the distinct difference, is they are just basically the plant's response to stressors, and they are complementing our body and like, just again, just like the oxygen, they help our body, they inform our body about how to shift from inflammation to anti-inflammation.
okay. So except for cortisol, um, what else would you say should people really consider this as a go-to thing? What is this really good for?
Say that again.
What is
Cortisol.
no aromatherapy? What is it really? What are the typical things that people should want to heal with that?
Oh, that's a good, yeah. I typically people will come to me. I mean, we look at the specific symptoms. That's where when they come to me, um there's a collection of symptoms, if you will. And
Mm.
when I work with people, although I listen to the symptoms, and the way I practice in the model that I've developed is, our current culture looks at fixing the problem. And that's the whole focus of medications. We're fixing the problem, and then you end up having to need more and more and more. And when you do it from the aspect of working with the gut, that's one of my first things I go to is, regardless of whether you have symptoms or not, um, body's on high alert. And in all fairness, we already have established that a lot of us are already preconditioned prior to being born. Um, then you have the environmental factors. At this point, the EPA here in the US has already identified over 70,000 chemicals that influence the hormonal system. So now you have the presence of that. So even again, like I've started to say, even though there's no digestive issues that we're aware of, I focus on the gut because supporting the microbiome is essential. And I then work with, and of course, at that point, we're also taking into consider the brain. Do I focus? Do I take into consideration symptoms? Of course, because if you're experiencing a symptom, you're creating more stress. So you want to help, eliminate the symptom or quiet the symptom, but while supporting the brain, the gut, and the immune system. Those three are the ones that scientists are looking at, there's a relationship between the brain and the immune system. And just for clarification purpose, there's no specific area. The immune system is located in our cells. So there's a relationship between those two and the immune system. And I actually did a blog post on this not too long ago, on the fact that the there's an aspect to our immune system also in our gut. So those three, in addition to making sure that the symptoms are covered, and this is what makes it very unique to the individual, because you're gonna have different symptoms, right? But you want to take all of those three factors into consideration, because now you're cultivating that aspect of, we're dealing with this, and our focus is the end goal. The focus is wellness. So we're getting from this point, and we're closing that gap right now.
Okay,
I don't know.
makes
Does that
sense.
make sense?
Yeah, complete sense, and I understand why you start there. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to make sure that people can get a hold of you. Do you do distance work?
I do.
Okay.
Mhm.
And do you recommend that somebody look for somebody near them, or is this one of those hard to find kind of professions?
It's kind of hard to find. That's the reason why I'm teaching this. I'm starting to teach this because it's something that it only made sense to me because I could see, and like when like we all see like a problem, right, and we want to fix the problem,
Mm,
and I don't, and there's a gap. There was a gap because we can understand why we focused on the problem for so long, right?
mm,
With fixing the symptom, that's just how our ancestors did things. But we have the information today through the Human Genome Project and the continued studies today. We know how to actually influence a better way of being healthier.
mm,
It's just not being implemented. So that's what I've created here and now teaching it because well, I actually work with Amish people. You asked me if I worked in distance. I work with people. I work with Amish people too, and that's one of the things that they started asking me. What's going to happen when you're not here? Can you teach us? So I thought, yeah, that's just so yes, it's going to be hard
mm.
to find somebody.
Yeah, I
And
thought so because you're the first one I've ever met. I, I'm always involved in natural sort of stuff, even although I'm like you, I am trained in the medical research area. But and when you understand first of all the mind body connection, when you understand how important it is, and then when you start finding the damage that pharmacology is doing to us, and then when you look at the medical science and how it just want that symptom to go away. It doesn't want to go and find out what caused it. And we start to put all of that together. So that's why I've lost my skepticism about a lot of stuff, and I'm really embracing natural stuff. But I see so many people who arrive and they are already at the point of finish.
yes,
I can't even do the mind stuff because we have to work on the body first. We have to get that cortisol levels under control, and at the same time start changing how you look at stuff, how you start dealing with a hurt, damaged inner child that needs to be held and nurtured. So we've got to work on all of that, but I can't just do that. I need to have people work on the body at the same time because I cannot just do mind work. Yeah, I can't. So yeah, and I learned that for myself. I didn't have enough resources because my body got to the point where I have neglected myself so much, and that I got to that point where the damage was so severe that it took a long time, and so I'm really thankful for you. Please share your details, and I'll put in my newsletter, and we can go back into the Facebook and into YouTube, and we can add your details in there so that people can get hold of you. I really do want people to get hold of you. And yeah, I understand what you're saying. For me also, I, I haven't found people who could help you with realigning this inner child, and there are just not enough people who does it, and that's why I'm also now teaching people how to do it because there's such a big lack of knowledge in the world out there, and too much focus on all these other things. So I really want to share that. Okay, let's go and see if there are any more comments. Wait, look here, look here, there's the question. Right, do you teach this?
yeah, yes, I do.
That's cool. The plant stress is our relief. I mean, that's an amazing idea. Okay, all right. So thank you for all the hearts there, people. You know I love it. Thank you so much for that. And I'm going to ask all of you to share this because I mean, really, we know so many people who are so stressed. So please share the video, and this is the case where you can tell somebody, listen, I think you need to listen to this. This is so important. Put aside an hour of your life. Just go sit there and listen to this because this is so, so important. Tammy, you explained this so well.
Oh, thank you.
Really explained it so well. I learned a few new things and I didn't know that I could about cortisol because it's affected me for such a long time. I want to say to people, please take action because if you don't start putting yourself in the front of your queue, nothing will remain of you. You have to start doing this. And so here, for once, I have found an expert at this, and this is a very rare expert. And so please share this. Continue giving us hearts. I don't know about you, Tammy, but I will go in tomorrow again. I'll go and look at all the comments and
Yeah,
ask questions.
whatever questions there are, I'll be happy to answer them in the chat for sure. I'll come back and answer them.
Okay, all right. So if there's any more questions, you can put them in now. Let me see there. I don't see any more questions. And don't forget those hearts there. Thank you for the ones who's given them. The hearts and the shares and the comments makes us very, very happy. It tells Facebook that you like the content. It let more people see it, and it's so important that people see this. Okay, Tammy, we'll talk again because this is not your only area of expertise. And so many of these things tie together beautiful, the body, the mind connection, and our, yeah. So we'll talk some more, right?
I look forward to it.
Okay, great. Excellent. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Everybody who comes in the replay, you're very important to us too. And see you next time. Sunday for Tiny Seeds. Thank you, Tammy.
Bye. Thank you.